Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us. As we do every week, our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
Fans, welcome back for another week of the 5-3-1, where we take our top 5 list on a particular subject, vote it down to a top 3, debate that top 3 down to a number 1 spot. First off, Dave, how are you doing today?
Oh, baby, you know we funky like a monkey. Ready to get it on. How you like the Matterhorn video? You like that white ceiling in the background right there? You got all like fancy like wrestling posters. I got this blank, fucking dingy white ceiling.
Yeah,
what are you going to do, baby?
We might have to start soundproofing that room. Who knows? We might be stepping our game up here soon, folks. But, Dave, you picked this week's
big money
list.
offers on the table.
We're looking up. Now, Dave, like I was about to say before, man, you picked this list this week. Tell us about it and kind of tell us why you picked it.
Yeah, so after last week's top 5 Kurt Angle matches, kind of got me thinking that's one topic that, we haven't done a ton of. We did, best Bret Hart matches, best Shawn Michaels matches, maybe a few other ones. But I'm, thinking, okay, who's a good quality wrestler that has a lot of great matches that our fan base probably can identify with? I thought, you know what? One that spans over a couple decades now, Dustin Rhodes. All right, I thought whether he's Goldust, whether he's Dustin, that's a guy that's had a lot of great matches. I think some of our fans who contribute these lists really like his stuff. So I said, let's do it, baby. So I hit you up. I said, Producer Joe, top 5 Dustin Rhodes Goldust matches. What do you think? And you didn't get back to me because you were probably high or drunk or something. So I said, fuck him. I'm just going to do it anyway. And then it was done.
I think it was a work day.
Could have been a work day.
I don't know. I'm babysitting 3 dogs, but we're getting over it. I do remember seeing the list, and I do now remember forgetting to respond. But
it's okay, baby. I buried Team 4 here last week. I'll bury more people before we're done.
Anybody breathing's about to catch it. But, personally...
Let me start off, man.
Okay.
I got a lot of lists.
You got the floor,
I got
baby.
more than you. I'm a big motherfucking deal. All right. I got Zach St. John, who came here, got me her list this morning here. He said, okay, in no order except for Cody versus Dustin at Double or Nothing. Easily my favorite match for both of them. And then he had Dustin versus Bunkhouse Buck at the Spring Stampede. Goldust versus Razor at Rumble 96. The Canadian Stampede in your house match. Goldust versus Randy Orton when Goldust came back. Because I remember thinking, damn, he still has it. It was a Raw, I want to say 2013 maybe. And definitely honorable mention, he said, to the Sting Squadron versus Dangerous Alliance War Games match as well, which, I've said before is my favorite War Games of all time. So.
Yeah, that is. I definitely see it popping up on a couple lists. And we have the Goldust and Orton on another list I saw as well. So not to get too much.
Funny? Yeah, that made it on. Maybe it was the list I saw with you, but yeah, I saw that a couple times too, and I'm like, wow. I was like, man, I almost want to go back and watch that. Like, people remember that. And then another one that made our list a couple times, like, not to get too deep into it, we'll see it definitely at one other point, is that Bunkhouse Bunk Ring Stampede match there. So I was like, okay. So, which to me just shows you, like, that's the kind of wrestler Dustin was. Like, he can have quality matches with almost anybody, whether you were, super talented or whether you were just a brawler, technical, like, Dustin could go.
Plus, if you look at his career, it stems from like the late 80s up until now.
Yeah.
He's got that early WCW era. There's a little bit of TNA in there. There's WWE. Now, somebody that I usually reach out to, but you got a hold of him this week because these fucking dogs, is Jesse from New Hampshire. He has the Rhodes Brothers versus the Shield, Battleground 2013. Goldust versus Undertaker, In Your House 8. Goldust versus Piper, WrestleMania 12. Rhodes versus Steamboat, WCW Saturday Night, 1/16/93 to crown the new U.S. champion. And Dustin versus Cody, Double or Nothing 19. I would have argued earlier that it might just be recency bias that match is popping up, but it's on a lot of lists, so I don't think it's just recency.
Nah, it's a match with a lot of emotion. But shout out to Jesse. Actually, when I talked to him, I said it was a really cool that he put that Ricky Steamboat match there from WCW Saturday Night, because that's not a match I think that would be on a lot of people's list. And he said what triggered him to go watch that was it was the Iron Anderson podcast with Conrad. I guess they talked about what happened with Iron and Eric Watts. They did that angle where Eric Watts put the SPF on Iron at a gas station. Well, on that WCW Saturday Night taping was Ricky Steamboat versus Dustin Rhodes. And so check it out. I haven't got to do it yet, but I plan to.
That's where I first became accustomed to Dustin, was in that WCW era when he was the Natural. And I thought he was the best white meat babyface of that time. Really got at it. I think that match on the tractor trailer did him a disservice for his time there.
Sure.
But it's crazy the long career he's had. Whose list do you have up next?
Man, 11th hour. I got him this morning. AJ Strangebrew coming in. He got me War Games 92, Rhodes versus Bunkhouse Bucks, Spring Stampede 94, Goldust and Cody versus The Shield, Battleground 2013, Dustin versus Cody, Double or Nothing, and he also has that Goldust versus Randy Orton from Raw 2013. To Google best Dustin Rhodes Goldust matches and see what comes up.
Yeah, I was gonna see what the first, we'll say 6 selections is, because there'll be a match. He's like,
I'm curious. Hey, you know though, War Games 92. I don't think that's the thing Scott Scrawdon won, where Dangerous Alliance. I want to say that's a little earlier. That might be one of the Horsemen ones.
It's a good question. You want me to get up and get
Or it might
the
be
War
Dangerous
Games
Alliance.
DVD and check it out?
Yeah.
You want me to do that?
I should look this up.
All right, hold on. Let me go get the DVD.
Oh, yeah. No, babe, what do you want to do? All right, it's your show, too.
You know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
Moving on.
We'll move on to Mike Flynn. He's got Cody versus Dustin, Double or Nothing. Austin LOD, Goldust Shamrock versus the Hart Foundation, Canadian Stampede.
Yeah.
Cody and Goldust versus Roman and Seth, Battleground. You pick the year. Was that 2013? Is that the Rhodes? Okay, Rhodes versus them.
For the Shield?
Yep.
Yeah, that's been on a few lists here. So, yeah, that might make the cut. That's a couple lists. It's one coming up already here.
Sting Squadron versus the Dangerous Alliance, Wrestle War. I'm guessing 92.
Yeah. Okay.
And Goldust versus Randy Orton on Raw.
Yeah, man. It's funny that Randy Orton match and that Shield match keeps popping up. Now, I remember the 2013 match him and Cody had with the Shield, because it was so well done, because the Shield at that time was so well protected. And here we had like Dustin and Cody kind of fighting off in that underdog spot. And it was like, they had a lot of momentum though, because like the fans were really getting behind them. It was like, are they going to beat the Shield? Like, if this feud wasn't happening, like, I don't know if they would, but they had backed them in the corner where their jobs and their careers were on the line. And man, It all came together, and that was what I remember. Now, that Orton match, I want to say, happened a little before that. That was basically Cody had lost to Orton, and in real life, Cody was had just gotten married at that time and wanted some time off. So the Authority put a stipulation in there that if Cody lost, he'd be fired. So then Goldust came back to wrestle Orton to try to get his brother's job back. So that's when they had the match, and that's what people were impressed with. Man, Goldust still had a lot of fire left in the tank.
Yeah,
now, speaking of a lot of fire left in the tank, if you will, baby, I don't mean to cut you off, Joey, but I've been hitching. I got to say this. My man Randy Oscar got a list, and you know he's bringing the fire. So we can't wait no more, baby.
We can't hold him back.
Here it is, baby. Dustin Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes, Double or Nothing. Goldust versus Razor Ramon, Royal Rumble 96. Goldust versus Randy Orton, Raw, September 9th, 2013. Randy bringing the big dates there. Goldust and Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, WWE Battleground 2013. And here's one for you. Goldust versus Chris Jericho, WWE Superstars, March 4th, 2010. Motherfucking Randy delivering as always.
Wow, he was going deep on the network for that. He always brings the deep cuts. And speaking of deep cuts, we got Scott from Voluntown. He's got Cody versus Dustin, Double or Nothing 2019. Sting Squadron versus the Dangerous Alliance, War Games 92, baby. Canadians.
Oh, so it was 92. There you go.
Yep. Yeah, shit, that just answered the question. Canadian Stampede versus the Hart Foundation. We talked about that stacked team. Rhodes and the Nasties versus the Stud Stable, War Games 94. And Rhodes versus Bunkhouse Bucks, Spring Stampede 94.
Yeah, it's interesting some of these matches that keep popping up, man. A couple with Bunkhouse. I feel like I'm really seeing that Shield match pop up a lot. Cody and Dustin against each other at Double or Nothing keep popping up a lot. And that Randy Orton match keeps sneaking in there, too.
Yeah, I think that's going to be our top three going forward.
It might be. Well, you know what? Let me throw you another list. I got Mikey and Fred from the Facebook page. He's always coming at me with that Facebook page. He's got Goldust versus Piper, WrestleMania 12. Cody versus Dustin, Double or Nothing. Cody and Goldust versus The Shield, Battleground 2013. Jake the Snake versus Dustin, September 26, 1992, Deep Cut. And Orton versus Goldust, Raw, September 9th, 2013. So, once again, yeah, I think we do have our final three here. I mean, me and you still got to read our list, but damn. But Deep Cut with the Jake the Snake one. Huh.
Yeah, there's a couple matches on these lists I'm going to have to go back and find. I'll bring in my list next. I got Goldust versus Piper, WrestleMania 12. I got the Spring Stampede match, or Canadian Stampede match versus Hart Foundation. I got Cody versus Dustin, Double or Nothing 2019. Rhodes and Cody versus The Shield, Battleground 2013. Sting Squadron versus Dangerous Alliance, Wrestle War.
I want to read my list, and I want you to look at your list and tell me what we got going on here. I got versus The Shield at Battleground 2013. Cody at Double or Nothing. War Games 92, Dangerous Alliance versus Sting Squadron, the Canadian Stampede, and Piper at Mania 12. Joe, did we literally just hit every single match?
We got every single match the same. That is how in sync the Working Fans podcast is. You come here for consistency.
Tag team, baby. I'll give us a broadcast deal. I don't know.
You're going to want us on your TV soon, but... Now we're looking at top three lists. I think we've already narrowed it down with our list before. How do we move on from there?
All right, so just to confirm, we got Cody at Double or Nothing.
Yep.
We got the match with The Shield at 2013.
Yep.
And then the Orton match from that Raw.
That Raw, yep.
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of the Orton match at Raw. Even though a lot of people said that's where it looked like Dustin had it back. Because honestly, it didn't stick out as much as the other two matches did for me. I do remember that happening. I remember that, but to me, there was much more of a build going into that Shield match where Dusty was in the corner as well, and their jobs were on the line against the Shield, who had never lost at that time. Yeah. Maybe they had one, but it was very rare. So
I think the other two matches had much bigger stories behind them. And I mean, Cody versus Dustin is one of the biggest things AEW has done to this point, and it's interesting where they went from that match.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, I know sometimes we get WWE haters on here and AEW haters and whoever you are. It doesn't matter. I always just try to call it how it is, all right? So how it is in this one is because I think there was a great story for both those matches with the Shield. And personally, I felt something. I remember in 2013 watching that and excited, but feeling what I did in 2019 when Goldust wrestled Cody, and the fact that was AEW's first big stage, really, that edges it out for me. So it has nothing to do. It's just the fact that was that promotion's first big stage. You're telling that story, the interviews that led to that. They didn't have a lot of time to build it, but they did. And then the blood and everything, you know, to me, it's just a classic. It means something to me. I actually got to talk to Dustin very briefly at a event we went to for an autograph signing and a wrestling show. Just told him that was one of the few matches that made me feel something. He was super cool, you know, and I'm sure people tell him shit like that all the time. But he was super cool, and it just, for me, that's the match.
Yeah, and Dave, you know what the music means. I think we've decided on a top one. Cody versus Dustin, modern classic. It's not too often that work sport will make you feel something. And I just think the storytelling they did with that match was incredible. So, guys, thank you for joining us again for the 531 this week, and we will see you again next week. Allow us to reintroduce ourselves. I'm producer Joe, the man they call Dave in the middle. You got AJ Strangebrew on the side. And we are brought to you by 482 Designs, FOUR 82 Designs. They did the shirts that we are selling. If you want one of those shirts, workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Get to us. We'll get you the PayPal, and we will get a shirt and sticker in your pocket.
If you order the shirt now, you can actually get an official shirt before I do.
That is very much true. Randy got a shirt before you. Randy actually picked one up from us the other day.
In fairness, he broke into Dave's house.
I did not see him if you did that. I want to know about that, Randy.
Now, guys, we were disappointed because Wednesday we thought we had what was perhaps our best debate topic to date, and that was who is a better talker between Dusty and Flair.
Ooh.
And I actually cut out some sound bites, and it was a lot of fucking work. And it was such a good topic that we had to re-record today to bring this to you. So I am going to start off with what is probably, I would say, one of Ric Flair's most famous promos. And here it is right now.
Wrestling Ric Flair, and here is the World Heavyweight Champion. You know, girls, why don't you give it to him one more time? Woo! That's who's standing here today. The World Heavyweight Champion. Only one. And you're looking. Oh, girls, I can't stand it. Now I gotta be quiet. Nikita Koloff.
Listen to that crowd. You don't hear crowds like that much anymore.
That's the end of it. Dusty Rhodes, don't ever make a mistake. A stick in your nose in my business. If I'm down and out, I'll get up and take care of myself. So Dusty Rhodes, remember, when you walk out here, talking Ric Flair, don't think you can walk in that ring and give me a hand or try to help me out and ease the tension in our relationship. Philadelphia, I'm going to tear you down.
This is how AJ's wife talked to him.
When I get to town, we're going to treat all you women the way women ought to be treated.
Jesus Christ.
Because the NWA and some real men are going to take that Civic Center apart, and then we're all going to be over at rodeo, driving the women wild. Now, get ready.
I got Dusty.
We're on tour, and we're doing it better than anybody else alive. Now, Buddy Landell, it's so hard for me to sit back here in this studio.
Randy Osgood's in the house.
Hollering my name.
The Randy Oscar? The one who broke into Dave's house and stole a t-shirt?
On spilled liquor in bars from one side of this world to the other that you made. You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing.
Man, Diddy. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Hard time.
My money's on Diddy all day.
Jesse in the house. I hope he's holding that new baby, letting him listen to the pure gold coming out of Ric Flair's mouth right now.
You knew that I was going to be the biggest star of them all.
It's important for that baby to learn how to treat a woman right away.
To bring the real.
I said some stuff that I don't know if it made the cut during the live show Wednesday.
We're family. Only in Arnie and Ricky. We do it better than everybody else. Don't wrap me up.
Guys, Randy wants to set the record straight.
Champions, Ric Flair, the world champion, Dusty Rhodes, the world connection.
That at my house.
Don't you go smiting his good name, goddammit.
Girls all around the world keep asking me the same question.
Oh, we got a heart emoji, so we are definitely not.
The only thing I want to know from Randy is farmers.com really the best place to find women?
Farmersonly.com.
Sorry, my bad. Farmersonly.com.
You can find him under the name Dusty.
We're talking about all man. Ric Flair.
He actually has it under Randy and Hawaii, just so he seems exotic.
The best wrestling family.
He's driving the women crazy.
Oh, man. I'm on fire today.
Wow, Jake St. John jumping in with the first vote. There's Ric Flair. There's
You're damn right, Jake. You're damn
I have
right.
to know for a fact, Jake actually voted for Dusty because Dusty is poetry, baby.
I was going to bring that up because he said every time Dusty talked, it was like poetry. But
If you're
AJ,
walking
why
in
don't you
here
take a
Flair
minute?
that promo, though,
First of all,
I would do the same thing. I'd be like,
First of all,
"Woo!"
Dusty's like poetry if you didn't get past the 3rd grade.
Now, AJ, why don't you start off making your case for Flair because you jumped at the chance to Ric Flair. You almost demanded it.
After listening to that, I'm not sure I need to say anything. That's Ric Flair touches all the bases in this promo. He went after good guys, bad guys. He's going after Buddy Landell for being the nature boy.
He went after women.
He went after women. So I said he went after the bad guys. But he even talks to Dusty.
Can have your ass.
He talks to Dusty. He says, "Hey, Dusty, don't you come down here and lend me a hand. I don't need your help. I'll dust myself off and get my own self back up on my feet. I don't need your help."
That's what AJ's wife told him the other night. Don't touch me.
All the time. First of all, that's the one match I can't win. But however,
how about Jimmy Snuka?
Jimmy Snuka chopped me harder than any human being ever has, but that's another story and a whole lot of cocaine.
I was going to say, one day we'll get to the bottom of that, Graham. I mean, that story.
Hey, he didn't kill me. Allegedly. But let me talk about Ric Flair for a minute here. Ric Flair, when he did his interview, similar to what Jake said, how there's Ric Flair and there's everybody else. Ric Flair lived a lifestyle and portrayed a character that basically every person, especially in the time period, the 80s, you're talking about the Wall Street generation. You're talking about good boy, Zach. Good boy. You're talking about the yuppies. You're talking about everybody wanting to actually live that BMW Corvette lifestyle. And Ric Flair,
that cocaine lifestyle.
Yeah, that's Tully Blanchard. But Ric Flair, he epitomized what that generation was and where they were going to. And for a generation like myself who was growing up in that time period, there's not a one of us who didn't want to be Ric Flair. I have to believe that Dave, sitting in his house, never once.
Sorry, Scott popped me.
That was good.
And the town is his hometown, wherever his marital residence is.
Hey, you notice I'm in my studio apartment or my Jeep, whichever one.
It's an interesting point there. How many Flair promos there was done? You know what? I can remember a lot of Dusty promos, honestly.
Yeah, but did Dusty ever make you want to be Dusty?
I don't know. I don't know how to get that thing off my belly.
Yeah, but hold on. Dusty made me feel more emotion. All right.
He made you feel hatred for the South.
I've never. Yeah, thank you. There we go. Jesse talking about kings and queens. I love it. See, Dusty
now, I think one important distinction to make between the two is that Ric Flair was mainly like kind of being braggadocio. It was a lot about him, where I found that Dusty, while it was about him, was also about connecting with the crowd. Flair tended to try and connect upwards, while Dusty kind of connected lower with the common man, the working man.
But Flair connected so well that they actually got to a point where he couldn't get booed. He'd come out there and tell you every braggadocious thing on the planet. If guys just sat there going, well, hell, that's who I want to be. And they ended up cheering for this guy.
And you heard the ladies going wild in that promo. I mean, Flair would drop his hotel room in promos or where he was staying. And that's another level of crazy.
Ric Flair ended up getting to a point where he would get cheered for a finishing move of a low blow.
I mean, I will say this. As much as I'm going to be rooting for Dusty here, we do have to give respect for Rick for truly living his gimmick and becoming an alcoholic and cheating on his wives. So I mean, getting back to that point. So.
Getting back to Jimmy Snuka, nobody lived the gimmick more than that guy. He was a killer.
Yeah, let's deter to Jimmy. This ain't got nothing to do with Jimmy. How about we get a Dusty clip? How about that? Is it time yet? Give me some Dusty.
Yeah,
all right. You want a Dusty clip? I'm gonna give you probably what is his best known promo.
Sure.
And that is this one right here.
Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And Dusty, your fans welcome you back, man. First of all, I would like to thank the many fans throughout this country that wrote cards and letters to Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, while I was down. Secondly, I want to thank Jim Crockett Promotions for waiting and taking the time, because I know how important it was. Starcade 85 it is to the wrestling fans, it is to Jim Crockett Promotions. And Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, with that weight, got what I wanted. Ric Flair, the world's heavyweight champion. I don't have to say a lot more about the way I feel about Ric Flair. No respect, no honor. There is no honor among thieves in the first place. He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family. You don't know what hard times are, Daddy. Hard times are when the textile workers around this country are out of work. They got 4 or 5 kids and can't pay their wages, can't buy their food. Hard times are when the auto workers are out of work and they tell them go home. And hard times are when a man has worked at a job 30 years. 30 years, they give him a watch, kick him in the butt, and say, hey, a computer took your place, Daddy. That's hard time.
I got to admit, I've heard that promo I don't know how many times, and it's still giving me chills. It's also funny because a computer took your job, Daddy.
You took your job, Daddy. Listen, I've listened to that promo with people who aren't wrestling fans, and I've run into them afterwards, and they still will quote that promo once in a while. They're like, nah, I know I'm bad, Daddy. They know I'm bad.
Yeah, because how many years ago did that happen? And the fact
85.
that you could still be replaced by a computer is almost more likely now than it was then.
And
in fairness, a computer would have known more moves than Dusty Rhodes.
Brandon Thomas letting us know the Orton family was the best wrestling family. That is true. And we will talk about that in a future episode. But right now, we're talking about the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes versus Kiss Stealing, Wheeling, Dealing, Ric Flair. And my money's on Dusty Rhodes, baby, because Dusty made you feel. Now, Rick, get you excited. You know, you listen to Rick. He's super entertaining.
A bit.
But Dusty could bring tears to your eye. All right?
Dusty made me feel like I was in great shape.
You love Dusty. First off, you're trashing Dusty just to win this argument. But you can't even look straight up because you know if you hear Dusty's promo too long, you're going to start crying. You're like, oh, Dusty, I'm such a fan.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Let's remember Ric Flair wanted to call himself Rambling Randy Rose. And Dusty had to say, don't do that, baby. Be Ric Flair. Because there's only one Dusty Rhodes. And there's only one Ric Flair, too. But to me, Dusty made you feel it. And look what Dusty had us to work with. I said this on Wednesday, too. Well, let's see what we got here. Don't bring it to the wrestling. Keep it to the promo. It's all Dusty. The view never changes. Versus yes, thank you. The view never changes, baby.
Oh, come on.
AJ, when you all walk behind her, the view never changes, baby. The view never changes.
What that tells me is clearly Jay is a walk behind her.
Now, one of the things that I mentioned on Wednesday is that if you look at a lot of the promos that they did, some of their biggest promos are actually versus each other, which is pretty wild.
Yes. Yeah, they're one of the – we should do a debate sometime or top 5 on the greatest rivalries in pro wrestling. Because
Charlotte –
Flair's got it right there.
Guys, Charlotte and Mid-Atlantic Wrestling in that time period is not the same without Dusty and Flair going head-to-head.
I thought you were going to tie this to the women's revolution, and I'm like, I'm dying to see where you're going with this.
That's right, baby. Charlotte ran to town. Woo!
Hey,
now
how do we know Dusty's not the real dad?
Baby, I didn't touch that bitch.
Maybe Beth did the job. I don't know.
We don't even know. Oh yeah, okay. Charlotte's mom. Let's say, which one of Flair's wives Dusty maybe touched?
Now, guys, is there anything either more of you guys want to say about this? Because we just kind of threw this together last minute today because anybody that watched Wednesday saw the fucking debacle that video was. But we put a lot of work into this segment, and you guys felt passionate about this. Like, you guys fucking busted my balls up until the moment we got this thing working today.
We had to let you know.
That's not true. We're busting your balls during it, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hasn't stopped. At least now I can be like, who figured it out, motherfucker?
I'm pretty sure it was me and Dave's advice.
Yeah,
we all won. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, for me, I wanted to say that, somebody said it best in the comments there. If you're sticking just to promos, that's where we kind of lean towards Dusty, in my opinion. Is Flair a better all-around presentation worker? Yeah, he is. That's not a knock on Dusty. That's because Ric Flair is one of the greatest of all times. Flair is also one of the best promos of all time. When it gets just down to promos, I say Dusty makes you feel. And if you look what Dusty's working with, Dusty looked like an overweight guy at the bar. But somehow when that guy started to talk, you were like, okay, that's somebody.
Good news, Dave. Scott gave us a thumbs up and a thumbs down.
He's torn. I don't blame him. I'm passionate too, Scott. I get it.
It's a little of that. What was that? The Zodiac, where it was yes, no.
Yes, no, baby. Brutus the fucking barber beefcake.
Well, guys, you know what the music means. It means AJ has to get home before his wife puts him in a knuckle lock or some kind of submission move. But we figured out the issue. We are going to be coming back to you Wednesday, bigger and badder than ever. And we just want to say thank you for not abandoning us after that show, because that shit hurt.
And now you get up close and personal with producer Joe's face more than ever.
I know, my head feels so fucking big. We'll figure out this whole situation at another time.
Yeah, because that's what's making your head big.
That damn camera. Camera did me dirty.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, didn't they say the camera adds 15 pounds to the head?
Yeah, my camera added 275. It sucks.
All right, guys,
Get rid of that bald-headed guy.
We're gonna let Scott get in the last comment of the day. Your head looks so fucking big too. Excellent, guys. Well, the ball busting never ends. It doesn't happen just at the day job.
I'm just glad for once he's talking about your face.
All right, guys, I'm breaking down. My baby lungs are hurting. We will see you Wednesday. Welcome to the 531, where we debate a top 5 list on a particular subject, further discuss it down to a top 3, and then eventually settle on a top 1. Now after this beat, we'll get to today's subject.
Or driving with one hand.
We're back with the Working Fans Podcast, 5-3-1 style. It's the best of Dusty matches. We got AJ Strangebrew. He's driving. He's here.
Driving home. What?
We're going to kick this off. All right. I got all the list. I'll ask for some comments here and there, AJ. We'll start off with my man, Zach. He's got Dusty versus Steve Corino. Bull rope match. ECW Living Dangerously. Dusty versus Flair, Starrcade 84. Dusty versus Flair, Starrcade 85. And Dusty versus Tully Blanchard, Great American Bash 87.
Dusty versus Flair 84 was an interesting choice to me. 85, the other one that he picked, is the better of the Starrcade matches. I think they just put together a much better match and had a great feel that night. That's just my opinion on those two Starrcade matches.
Yeah, no doubt. Actually, it's kind of funny because I think, my notes, I was looking at it. Dusty versus Flair at 85. That was the one with Joe Frazier.
That's the one with Joe Frazier, yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. We got Michael Flynn. He's got the War Games 87. Dusty Flair, Great American Bash 86. Dusty Iron, Great American Bash 87. Dusty Luger, Starrcade 87. And Dusty Starrcade 85. Dusty and Iron, Great American Bash 87. I remember that one.
That's a good pick. I mean, that's an interesting pick. I think the Luger pick might make a few lists, even though, because I think it's one of Luger's best matches, which is like saying, that shit smells really good.
You know what? It's actually on my list because I do think it's one of Luger's better matches. I think this is back in a period where Luger had a lot of promise.
Yeah.
It wasn't until actually, to me, when Luger got the world title was when he started to really put on, some of his worst matches. Yeah.
Well, I think what also happened was, to be honest with you, in this match, Luger still had something to prove, and he was in there with the guy booking the show.
Sure.
So that might have taken a little more effort than we usually see out of
and Dusty and the Horsemen, I think, really knew how to work towards Luger's strong point. And much like with Nikita, everybody back in that day was trying to get these guys over. They thought they were huge money potential.
Well, it's also the end of Dusty Rhodes' pinnacle, quite frankly. 87 going into 88 before he took off for the WWF.
Yeah, 89 was when he came to WWE, right?
That's what I'm saying. That 87 into 88 is pretty much the pinnacle of Dusty Rhodes as the booker there, and it was towards the end of it.
Yeah, until he went on to his true greatness in WWE with the polka dots that we all like to remember. Absolutely.
That's the Dusty we all love to remember.
Absolutely, I agree. We got Randy Oscar. He's got Dusty versus Flair 85, Dusty versus Tully 87, Great American Bash, Rhodes versus Harley Race 1979, NWA title, Starrcade 87, Dusty Rhodes versus AJ Styles, NWA/TNA 65, October 8, 2003. Randy with the deep cut with that Dusty AJ Styles.
Well, the problem is Dusty didn't get to work AJ Strangebrew like Angle in the Florida Independence. So he had
to settle
down on that and he had to settle and work with Styles.
Yeah, that's a shame, man. I think you could have done some magic together. Let me move on with my list here. We got, nice to know AJ listens to the show. We got Scott from Hollandtown. He's got War Games 87, Tully at the Bash 87, Flair at the Bash 86, Race for the NWA title 81. He's also got Corino, ECW Living Dangerously 2000. It's only a favorite of mine because I was there and it was surreal watching a bloody Dusty in street clothes beating the shit out of Steve Corino with a bull rope, throwing up middle fingers. I mean, if you were there live as a kid, how the hell could you not love that?
Let's be clear about something. That match is not. I don't want to spoil my list, but that match is not going to make my list.
Sure.
However, that is one of my favorite Dusty moments. We put greatest matches, so for me, it's hard to put that as one of my greatest.
Yeah, I understand that. To me, Dusty's a guy It's funny, you said before this, you texted me and said that it's going to be a lot easier doing Dustin's list than Dusty. And you're right, because we grew up on Dusty for the most part, but we really probably started getting more into our wrestling fandom and like remembering stuff during the Dustin era. Like that was our height probably. Whereas Dusty is somebody I kind of look back a lot more fondly on. I really appreciate him the older I got because of his interviews. But his matches kind of all blended in a little bit for me sometimes. I didn't really think about it. Like, you know, I remember the feuds with Tully, with Flair. You know, that's what I remember.
Exactly. And remembering the individual matches is what makes it tough. Because you're like, okay, so which match exactly was this? Because the feud went on for so long, it's almost hard to remember on the timeline which match was which in the feuds.
Absolutely. I got a message from producer Joe here. He's giving me some time cues, but I'm going to keep moving on. All right. We got, speaking of producer Joe, we got his main man, Jesse from New Hampshire. He's got Flair Starrcade 85, Flair at the Bash 86, Superstar Billy Graham 1977. I like that one. Superpowers versus the Horsemen, Bash 87. And he also got Corino at Living Dangerously 2000.
The Superstar Billy Graham one shows up on most highlights of Madison Square Garden and shows up on most WWE highlights of the 70s greatest matches.
Yeah, it's also one of Billy Graham's. I think it was Billy Graham really enjoyed working with Dusty.
Well, the thing is, Dusty borrowed a lot from Billy Graham.
Oh, yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting match to watch.
I got one more list here. I got, before I get to producer Joe's list and your list and mine, but I got Mikey and Fred from the Facebook page. He gave us Dusty versus Flair, Starrcade 85, Dusty Luger, Starrcade 87, Dusty Tully, Great American Bash 87, Dusty versus Race 79, and Dusty and Flair at Great American Bash 85.
Yeah, that's a very solid list. I mean, the thing with Dusty is it's hard to sit there and go, well, that list is horrible.
Yeah, he's got nothing but good stuff. I mean, I think for me again, it's more Dusty. It's more about his promos.
Yeah, and it's not like Dusty was a catch as catch can superstar where you know his matches were all emotional and emotionally charged and driven. So it's not
right. Like I could pick 5 great Flair matches, 5 great Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. I mean, if you gave me Steamboat, I'm sure I could come up with some lists too. I mean, it's easy. But, like, yeah, with Dusty, it's a little more challenging because he was such a great talker. I'm going to get the producer Joe's list here. He's got Dusty versus Flair 85. He's got the War Games 87. He's got Flair 86. I'm going to guess that's Starrcade. He's got Dusty versus Funk versus Corino at MLW King of Kings. And he's got Dusty versus Tully at the Bash 87. Glad he included that match from MLW. That's pretty cool. I know there's one thing, unlike some lists, like again, when we get like all the great wrestlers, we're having a lot of the same matches show up on this list over and over again, with a few exceptions. I have to say, what I'm noticing mostly is that Dusty Tully match, that Dusty Luger match, and a Dusty Flair match. You know, I think Dusty Flair Starrcade 85 and Luger Starrcade 87 and Dusty and Tully from the Bash 85. But let me go on with my list, because all those matches are basically there, too. I got, you know, the Starrcade 85 match with Flair, and that was the one, like we said, Joe Frazier was the special referee. Yep. Although, much like that match everybody loves, it's Race versus Flair from 83. I always give shit about Gene Kiniski kind of fucking things up as a referee. Joe Frazier was not as bad, but also at times kind of getting in the way a little bit back in the day.
Yeah, and the problem with any time you have a special referee like that is they're there to be seen.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. So I also got Luger with the Cage 87. I love the finish. That was where one thing we didn't talk about, that's where J.J. Dillon threw the chair in and Dusty caught it. DDT'd Luger on the chair. Maybe it was a pile driver, but he got the pin and then basically just set up Luger eventually, maybe about a month down the road, becoming a babyface and throwing J.J. Dillon out of the Bunkhouse Stampede Battle Royal.
Yeah. So it was the precursor to everything that was about to come.
I also had Dusty versus Tully at the Bash 85, which was a cage match for the TV title, by the way. You know, you would never – that was something you only saw back in the day. And one thing no one else had that I did have on my list, I had the Crockett Cup Finals from 87. It was Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff versus Tully Blanchard and Lex Luger. This is, of course, was supposed to originally be Magnum TA, and then Nikita Koloff walked down there with Dusty It was emotional. I remember watching this years after the fact with you. We were watching a best of DVD, and we saw the hug Dusty and Magnum gave each other. It was no storyline hug. This was clearly a lot of emotion. So I had to include the finals of that tournament in there for me.
So my list, I'm going to start off with one that nobody else had. I have the tag match that actually started it all. It was actually Duck Singh and Dusty Rhodes versus Mike and Eddie Graham. And it was actually, it's actually from Florida Championship Wrestling. And it's the first time Dusty Rhodes actually turns babyface. Mm-hmm. There's a miscommunication between Duck Singh and Dusty Rhodes, and Duck Singh is attacking the Grahams, and Dusty Rhodes turns on him in that match and actually turns babyface. And it's the first time where you see the electricity that is Dusty Rhodes, because he had been a heel most of his career up until that point, teaming with Dick Murdoch, working as a bad guy, trying to attack the Grahams, working through the AWA as a heel. And this was the first time where he really came out and did something babyface, and the crowd was just on fire for it, and it never looked back. So to me, that's got to be one of the greatest and most pivotal matches in his career. Other than that, I've got Flair 85 like you do. I've got Tully 87. I've got Race and Dusty for the title in 81. And then I've got, trying to remember the other Flair one. I've got Flair at the Bash. I think that Flair and the Bash in 86 was actually one of the top matches. 86 is such a hot year for wrestling for the NWA. What you talked about before with all the precursors, like you talked about 87 Luger. In 86, they did such a good job of storytelling right from the beginning, where they start building up with Baby Doll and Dusty Rhodes and Tully and Flair, Dusty injuring Ole Anderson, breaking the leg, similar to what happened to him. It's just such a great story year. And then to have it come to a pinnacle at the Bash in 86 with Dusty versus Flair was just great storytelling.
So my final three I got here, looking at the votes, I'm going to put that Luger 87 match in there. I'm going to put Tully, like I said, 85, the Bash, and I'm going to put Flair 85, Starrcade. I'd love to have that Crockett Cup Finals, but it didn't get enough votes. So I'm going to say the first guy I'm kicking out of here is Luger. I think it was an interesting turn of events, but I can't really put the match quality, as good as it was for a Luger match, I can't put it in there with those other two.
The problem is as good as it was for a Luger match, it just wasn't as good as a Tully or Flair match.
Nah, Tully or Flair. I know. Now, I don't know if we're going to debate this one. It's funny. Again, I like the Flair match. Him and Flair had such great chemistry. But maybe I just have an issue with the referee in there. And I love, Dusty and Tully's chemistry. For me, Dusty and Tully is kind of an underrated feud. Everybody puts the focus on Flair, but I love Dusty and Flair's matches. And to me, TV title, cage match, Great American Bash. I love it. Baby Doll screaming, like you said, at ringside.
The thing with Dusty and Tully is you can feel the legitimate heat between the two of them.
Sure.
And you feel the emotional things between them. And I prefer that match over the Flair match for that reason. I actually think that the chemistry is out of this world. And there are some people that'll disagree with that. I would love to see more interaction between Tully and Cody, quite frankly, on even today's product, just because there was such chemistry between the fathers. I mean, the two of them, Dusty and Tully. I can only imagine Tully coming out and talking trash to Cody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, at the end of the day, if people disagree with us, they should know not to put us in the 5-3-1 spot. I mean, we're gonna do it every time. Kane's the greatest mass wrestler of all time. I'm sorry, I stand by
it. I still remember him as the greatest luchador.
I mean, he was a big one. He was a heavyweight.
He was a dandy.
Yeah, not an El Dandy, but who are we to judge El Dandy? Yeah. All right, on that note, Tully versus Dusty, the Bash 85 is going to win. We're out of here. Working Fans Podcast.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.